Otello. Music by Verdi. Words by Boito. From Shakespeare. Milan, 1887. New York, 1888. London, 1889. When Otello was first produced, it was rapturously hailed by most of the critics as the composer's masterpiece, a verdict which would be stoutly challenged today. But in the late 90s, the world of music was perhaps a little Wagner mad. None but the master's methods were acceptable, and these were gulped down without discrimination. Consequently, it was considered a sign of grace that in this new score by the great Italian there was a comparative dearth of melody and very few separate numbers, while the musical interest was often to be found in the orchestra rather than on the stage. Certainly, Verdi seems to have laid aside his Italian singing robes for the time. You may call Otello music drama if you like, a successful experiment along the lines laid down by Richard Wagner. Indeed, this opera and its still finer successor, Falstaff, show a development in method and technique which is nothing less than astounding in a composer already past his 70th year. Both works call forth our affectionate admiration. The latter gives us unqualified delight, yet it is open to question whether either is such a genuine expression of Verdi's peculiar genius as we find in the last act of Il Trovatore, the close of Rigoletto, and scene after scene of Aida. Dramatically, Otello is apt to be dull, as any desiccated version of Shakespearean psychological tragedy is bound to be. The libretto is graced, but not saved, by the literary talent of the composer's lifelong friend, Arrigo Boito. It is worth noting that two of the most striking passages, Iago's Credo and Desdemona's Ave Maria, are interpolations by the librettist. The version of the Willow Song is taken from a very old Italian popular air, most beautifully treated. A century ago, another Otello, by Rossini, was very popular and became a showpiece for such artists as Pasta and Malibran. This work has long disappeared, though the Willow Song, Assisa al piede d'un salice, was heard frequently in the concert room till the end of the last century. Verdi's Desdemona has been a favorite role with great vocalists, Albani, Eames, Melba. But the success of the opera depends upon the exponents of Otello and Iago. We are not likely soon to see the equals of the artists who created these parts. Tamagno, the brazen-throated, and the admirable Victor Maurel. The latter's Iago is still remembered as one of the most superb performances of the operatic stage. Act 1. A seaport in Cyprus. The governor's castle near the shore. Without prelude, the curtain rises on a stormy sea. A ship is seen in peril, but as the wind falls, she comes safe to anchor, and Otello, governor of Cyprus, steps on land. He tells the assembled people of the success of his expedition against the Turks, and passes to his castle, after giving orders for all to celebrate his return with music and feasting. Iago now comes forward. In his heart, the storms of envy and malice are never still. He confides to Roderigo how he hates Otello and despises Cassio, who has been made captain over his head. To Cassio he now turns his attention. He plies him with wine, and the aid of a drinking song, Inafia Lugola, succeeds in making him drunk and embroiling him first with Roderigo, and then with Montano, the ex-governor. Finally, he contrives to stir up a general tumult, which brings the indignant Otello on the scene. Desdemona presently follows. The thought that her rest has been disturbed by the uproar rouses her lord to fury. All the blame is laid upon Cassio, who is deprived of his captaincy. Iago, the evil spirit of the play, has scored his first triumph. The act ends with a love duet of sustained lyric beauty. There are echoes here of the Shakespearean text, for instance, of the well-known lines, "She loved me for the dangers I had passed, and I loved her that she did pity them." But the words are mostly of Boito's invention. Special notice should be taken of the musical phrases accompanying the words "un bacio, un altro bacio." We shall meet this motif again in a very different situation. For conclusion, the voices mingle in a passage of exquisite tenderness. The Pleiades have set, the crescent moon is rising, the hour is late, but not too late for love, whispers Otello, as he draws Desdemona slowly up the castle steps. As giving us the only glimpse of happy love to be found in the opera, we feel that this duet might well be longer. Act 2. In this scene, the villainous Iago must be regarded, like Milton's Satan in Paradise Lost, as the real hero of the piece. In a room with balconies opening onto the great garden of the castle, we find him with Cassio, hypocritically condoling with his downfall, yet bidding him be of good cheer. His fortunes may be mended. Does not the fair Desdemona sway her lord Otello to her slightest wish? Let Cassio but gain her ear and induce her to plead for him. Othello will soon recall him to favor. The plot is laid with diabolical cunning, and the much-praised soliloquy for Iago, Credo in un Dio crudel, in which Verdi certainly manages to suggest the ravings of a lost soul, is finally heralded by a great blast of trumpets such as might attend the clanging of the gates of hell. Man, so runs the sound and fury of the words, is the child of the monster of cruelty who rules the world. In his own image he has created him. In his own image he has created him. I am vile, says Iago, because I am a man. I feel the primal slime within my veins. He whom you call a just and honest man is but a lying hypocrite. Man is the plaything of malignant fate from the hour of his birth to the last day of his life. Then comes death and nothingness. Only a fool believes in heaven. That is my creed. This outburst over, he turns to spy on Cassio and Desdemona talking together in the garden. His poor dupe is bent on ingratiating himself with the lady, who is all gracious sympathy with his misfortune. The approach of Otello from the castle hall gives Iago his opportunity. Taking up his position behind a pillar, he gazes fixedly and with a frown on the pair as Cassio is taking his leave. Just as Otello comes within hearing, the villain shoots his first poisoned arrow in the words, "Cio macora." It is enough. Othello's piece is gone. To his demand for an explanation, Iago replies with a feigned reluctance that serves to inflame suspicion. "My lord, before you were married, was Cassio acquainted with your lady? Beware of jealousy, my lord. It is the green-eyed monster. Only keep watch." This conversation is interrupted by a most welcome interval of pure beauty. Desdemona is seen advancing from the depths of the garden, surrounded by the fisher folk with gifts of flowers and shells, while children strew lilies in her way. They accompany with their delicious chorus with mandolin, cornemuse, and little hand harps. As Desdemona joins in the closing cadences, even Otello is charmed for the time from his jealous brooding, but her very innocence plays into the enemy's hands. The crowd dispersed, she at once approaches her lord on Cassio's behalf, urging her request with such insistence that Othello can hardly control the growing fever of jealousy. Desdemona, supposing him to be unwell, offers her handkerchief, which he throws angrily to the ground, from which it is recovered by Emilia in attendance on her mistress. Now follows a quartet in which Iago manages to snatch from his wife Emilia the handkerchief on which so much depends, while Desdemona pleads tenderly for pardon if happily she has offended her lord. But the poison is working fiercely in Othello's brain. He dismisses her harshly, and the rest of the act is filled by a long duet between the Moor and his evil genius. Othello is provided with a solo, Ora e per sempre addio, a piece of pure old-fashioned Italian opera, before his fury breaks loose. In his frenzy, he seizes Iago by the throat and flings him savagely to the ground. It is he who has awakened his master's suspicions. Now let him furnish proof. Iago answers with a version of the well-known passage, I lay with Cassio yesternight, etc. And he describes the stolen handkerchief which he declares he has seen in Cassio's possession. Othello needs no further evidence. Desdemona is guilty beyond question in his eyes, blind eyes indeed that cannot see the arch-villain at his side. It would be difficult to devise the right operatic ending for this scene. As it is, we have to be content with an undeniably stagey duet in which Iago and his victim join in a solemn vow that they will never rest till vengeance has been accomplished. Act 3. After a short prelude, in which the green-eyed monster motif of the previous act is repeated, the curtain rises on Otello and Iago in the hall of the castle. Iago, who by this time has his master under complete control, bids him remain while he fetches Cassio. Then, in hiding, let him note the young soldier's behavior, and he shall see that which will change suspicion to full certainty. Desdemona is seen approaching, and Iago departs, pausing to hiss the words, the handkerchief, into Otello's ear. As the young girl advances, radiant with beauty, innocence, and wifely devotion, even Otello can hardly believe her capable of wrong. Alas, her innocence again destroys her. She comes, she says, to plead once more for Cassio. Such great friends as they have been, will not her lord pardon and recall him? Othello is again in the raging furnace of jealousy. He asks her for a handkerchief. No, not that one, the one he gave her. Has she lost it, or given it away? Then woe betide her, for there is a curse attached to it. Even now the poor child fails to understand. Ah, she says, but you do but tease me, to keep me from plaguing you with my suit for Cassio. Othello loses his control. The handkerchief, he thunders, and charges her to her face with guilt beyond the scope of her imagining. Her protestations, her tears, her prayers are of no avail. The scene ends most cruelly. Taking her by the hand, he escorts her to the door with a frightful mockery of the courtesy he has shown on her entrance. "Give me once more that lily hand." Here he breaks off. "But nay, I ask your pardon." Then, shouting with the voice of a madman, "I did mistake you for that vile strumpet whom poor Othello took to wife." He thrusts her violently from the scene. His heartbroken lament for his lost love, "Dio mi potevi scagliar," is interrupted by Iago, who bids him hide behind the pillars, for Cassio is coming. Then follows the scene of Iago's jugglery with the handkerchief. The feather-headed Cassio is led on to jest and laugh over his amorous adventures, while Otello, who can see all, is yet not near enough to catch more than a word here and there, which his jealousy is quick to misinterpret. Yielding more and more to Iago's flattery, Cassio tells him a piquant little secret, how he has lately found in his bedroom a lady's handkerchief, dropped there by an unknown hand. "An unknown hand!" repeats Iago in derision, and loud enough for Otello to hear. "Show me the handkerchief." Cassio produces it. Iago takes it from him and manages so to display it that Otello can identify it beyond all doubt as the one he had given Desdemona. The music of this scene, and especially of the trio, is masterly in its subtle differentiation of the various emotions: Cassio's levity, Iago's delight in the success of his devilish cunning, Othello's furious despair. Notable also is the melodious grace of Iago's bantering song about the handkerchief, "Questa è una ragna." After Cassio's departure, Otello has but one thought, that Desdemona must die by suffocation, Iago advises, that very night as she lies sleeping. He himself will see to the slaying of Cassio. A long fanfare of trumpets announces the arrival of an embassy from Venice. Desdemona is summoned to help in the formal reception of the visitors, and even here some unhappy turn in the conversation leads her once more to speak kindly of her hope for Cassio's pardon. Her old friend Cassio. Otello can endure no further. He commands her to be silent in so terrible a voice as to shock the whole assembly. But still further blows await him. He reads the letter from the Doge of Venice, only to find that he is recalled to the capital, and that Cassio succeeds him as governor of Cyprus. Desdemona weeps for pity to see her lord's distress, and he, supposing her to grieve for the approaching separation from Cassio, throws her brutally to the ground. Lie there, and weep." A long and most elaborate finale delays the dreadful end. Desdemona makes a heartbroken appeal for pity, and the rest join in a chorus of sympathy, when the Moor, who is no longer sane, for whom the very air is filled with blood, breaks in with an awful cry, "Flee, flee from Otello," which sends them hurrying from the hall. Left alone with Iago, he raves more and more wildly, and falls at last unconscious to the ground. From the street come the shouts of the people. "Long live Otello! Long live the Lion of Venice!" Iago dares to place his foot upon his master's neck and, pointing with scornful finger, cries out in fiendish exultation, "See where your lion lies!" Act 4. The shortest and most perfect. The scene is Desdemona's bedroom, Words and action follow Shakespeare with fair fidelity. The short prelude is a mirror of the poor girl's sad and wistful thoughts. While Emilia assists her to disrobe, Desdemona sings the lovely Willow Song, an old strain that tells of one who died because she loved too well. On her, too, is the shadow of death. Verdi shows us this with a touch of true dramatic genius. Her mistress had dismissed Emilia with a good night sung quietly on a low note. As the woman turns to leave, her Desdemona realizes her utter loneliness, her need of sympathy in the face of peril. With a poignant cry in the highest range of the voice, she calls Emilia back and clings to her as she takes what she feels it will be her last farewell. Then, kneeling before an image of the Blessed Virgin, she says her Ave Maria, sings a quiet prayer, and lays her down to sleep. The musical interest now passes to the orchestra, as the drama runs its familiar course swiftly to the end. Othello enters, puts out the light, and, parting the curtains of the bed, gazes long on the sleeping Desdemona. We hear the theme from the love duet of Act 1, Un bacio, ancora un bacio, as he kisses her once, twice, thrice. The brutal deed is hardly done when Emilia clamors at the door for admission. Desdemona is still able to reply to her question, "Who has done this?" with "No one, myself, commend me to my lord." Iago's villainy and Desdemona's perfect innocence are proved by Emilia and Cassio. Otello is frustrated in his first attempt at suicide, but he has another weapon at hand, and the orchestra for the last time plays with the tender love motif as he falls dead beside the body of his innocent victim. I kissed thee, ever I killed thee, no way but this, killing myself to die upon a kiss.